I never was here for the snow roller, when they rolled the roads
Oh,
Well, that's
when did
nice
they
to know.
stop that?
quite a while ago. But that was when they rolled the roads to pack it down, and then it was still horse and sleigh. And then the mail delivery, they had it was an old Ford with half tracks on it, had bogey wheels and tracks from the back wheel. And that's how the mailman got around.
Nice. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Brian doesn't think he will be here. Mike is not going to make it, and I have not heard from Tom. So we have a quorum. However, I don't know if, how we would like to do officer positions, or just,
People who are here.
I'm, either, I guess I'm willing to continue on as the chair, so.
You've
I
got
will
my
make a,
vote.
I will make a motion for Ben, and Dick will second.
I'll second that.
I'll third it.
All in favor?
Aye. Good job, Joe.
Any opposed? No. You're in.
Yay.
And Brian was the,
This, whatever, vice chair.
I will make a motion that in Brian's absence, unless he declines to reappoint Brian as the vice chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And secretary?
You have a second? Pam.
Pam is currently the secretary.
I'm happy to share with anybody else who'd like to do it.
I'll make a motion that Pam be
I
the
will
secretary.
second the motion of Pam being secretary.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. I did the minutes slightly differently because I did not have access to the video recording. So these are just from my notes, so it may not reflect the entirety of the meeting, but I think I got the outline of what happened.
Ben, I thought, even though they're a little bit more pared down, they were, to me, this is very effective at this level. And I'd make a motion to accept them.
I'll second
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
that.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So this is where I feel like we're a little off piece because I scrambled last night to get this. I don't think we have anything for the moment for Prospect Farm.
No, I have asked Ellen if she could come to the next meeting, because the agreement between the town and the Ski Touring Foundation needs to be renewed in the fall. And I think it's best that she come in and make the proposal here for us to agree before the selectmen for their final vote. So Ellen, I believe, should be available at the next meeting.
Do you anticipate there's going to be any significant?
They are gonna propose some changes, yes. You know, picking up more responsibility in return for longer tenure.
For a longer term contract?
Yeah,
agreement?
right.
Wow, how many years is it now? Is it a year?
I think it's 5. And like all of those, you know, if a party breaches it, goes away, basically.
But they want it longer term because.
Basically, when you're putting money into repairing stuff, because that trail system goes out onto Forest Service land, et cetera, and the cost of like fixing a bridge in the Forest Service is extremely expensive today because of all the requirements. You don't want to be making expenses there where you're working under very short-term agreements. It's not only a problem for the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation, it's a problem for snowmobile groups, it's a problem for mountain bike groups where the cost of building trails and maintaining them today is just so much more expensive. But, and a lot of those trails, you know, your daily fee and your season's pass kind of pays for the grooming in that, but it's donors' money that actually pays for a lot of that other stuff, and you can't ask a donor to donate to help keep that system, and, you know, a couple of years later it's gone. So, you know, the need for tenure just to maintain that stuff, and that trail system functions not only on the town, but also on the Forest Service land. So she'll come in with some suggestions, and that'll be open for discussion at that point.
Is the agreement just with Jackson or the Forest Service also?
No, the Forest Service operates under a special use permit, just like Attitash, it has to pay a fee for special use permit.
Is that annual?
Is
or
that yearly?
No, well, yes, I mean, it isn't an agreement like with landowners. Jackson has sort of three kinds of easements with landowners. One is a landowner gives them a deeded right, and a number of landowners have actually given that. Other landowners give them what's called an indefinite easement, is you can use it unless I tell you otherwise.
So license.
And then some of them will ask for it to be renewed annually, so it's under all three of those. But in answer to your question, Dick, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't, special use permits do have some tenure, I just can't remember what it is. Because it'd be no different than Attitash or Wildcat, they aren't gonna be putting in a new lift or something if they've just got one-year agreements with the Forest Service.
Is this, the MOA is where the language for Jackson residents?
That's all
you
found
know,
in that is
okay.
correct.
Would that be subject to review, or that's just sort of kind of?
That's the last time that it came through. I wasn't on the commission here, but I did work when that was presented to the selectmen. It's an understanding that, for example, the current situation is if a resident wants to ski on the town land portion up there, they can go get a free pass. And those passes are available at the library, and I think there's a pass that's available here at the town hall. And that's a pass for each day, it's not an annual pass. So somebody from, a resident in town can go up and ski that portion for free. They can't ski the Forest Service portion, which is like if somebody skis Boggy Brook, for example, probably 70% of that is on Forest Service land. And that's because it's a special use permit, and the Ski Touring Foundation, whether it wanted to or not, cannot just give away those kinds of rights to a select group, because that's just basically what the Forest Service rules are.
So how do people know where they're skiing?
When you ski out Boggy Brook, when you get to the gate, or if you ski out Quail, you pass through a gate, and there's a sign there that says you're leaving.
There's not a sign on the Boggy Brook that says you're leaving town property, but there is on Quail.
That is correct, and but on Boggy, you get to where the gate is, which is the same place where it is on both of those. So that'll be an open discussion, sort of round one, this is what they're thinking, they'll present that. And this group can put their 2 cents in, and then, you know, kind of negotiate out what they think is proper for the use of Prospect. And then once that's agreed upon, then the recommendation here, I would suggest then go to selectmen, because the selectmen are the one in the end that has to sign, we can't.
And what do you think will happen with the prospects of skiing on the Dundee Forest? Is that gonna come up?
That, I attended the last meeting, which was held here in Jackson, Ben did as well. And that's obviously any agreement between the Ski Touring Foundation would have to be with Upper Saco Valley Land Trust, because it's their land, not the town. But the town has a rep on that committee. And at that meeting, we just asked for the Ski Touring Foundation just asked for clarification of if you wanted the Ski Touring Foundation to build a trail on part of your property, it would have to charge a fee, a pass. And that's the simple reason is it costs a lot of money to groom each night. Ski touring cannot groom because it costs over $1,000 a night to groom. You can't just say, well, anybody there, it's not worth their time to groom there if they can't recover some of the cost.
Unless they were considered backcountry trails.
If they're backcountry trails, that's totally different. But the mountain bikers were there. Who else was there? The backcountry skiers were there at that meeting. What am I forgetting? And those are interest groups.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess we can come to that, but that was sort of any new MOA would that include Dundee Community Forest? But since their agreement would be with Saco Land Trust, we wouldn't have,
Any input?
Well, you would have input.
except through the management committee. But so I would like to
That's
have that.
correct. Yeah.
I would like to have that as a discussion point, that for residents of the town of Bartlett and Jackson, that this may be just a marketing thing, but calling it a community forest, I can just see the people saying, well, this is a community forest, we're a resident of the town. Why is Jackson Ski Touring the only organization that gets to monopolize it in this way, where Granite Backcountry Alliance doesn't have a permitting, or the mountain biking doesn't have a permitting? They still maintain trail maintenance, so that, ski touring maintenance or argument is about grooming. So if there's not grooming done there, or like,
Well, they'd be two things. The Ski Touring Foundation, all we asked for clarity at that meeting was, if Jackson Ski Touring Foundation proposed a trail here, would we be able to collect, require a fee on that portion? Understanding that the area that the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust has put forth for the recreation area has just been one of the multiple parcels that's out there. And that is the parcel that kind of goes up onto Doublehead. All the other parcels, from what I understand, essentially would be simple trails. Second thing is, the Ski Touring Foundation was invited to be there. It wasn't like we want to be there. We were just asking if we were, if you're being invited us here and you're telling us we can't recover our cost and the daily grooming, then thank you. We'll leave.
Thank you,
Yeah, goodbye.
Mhm.
Whether the Ski Touring Foundation will even propose a trail is yet to be determined by the Ski Touring Foundation, because that's, within itself, that's not a system.
right.
The only thing that would make sense from the land that we were shown at that meeting would be somehow to connect from Dundee Road up to East Pasture. Understanding that access to East Pasture, unknown to most people, the parking there is on private land, including access to the Forest Service hiking trails in the summer.
Also, there's going to have to be a clarification of whether ski touring is a business, because that's one of the stipulations on Dundee Forest is no commercial activity.
That was the very question I asked them, Ben, Dick, because as I said, they actually have two documents that are contradictory to that statement, and I asked for clarification from the Ski Touring Foundation's perspective, because if you couldn't charge a fee for that use, there was no sense in us being at that meeting. you know, we appreciate the invite. Thank you very much, we're gone.
Right, because then a volunteer group could cut a trail
And the response we got back to that question is that in the deed itself, it is permitted to have fees to recover cost.
have,
It is permitted to have a fee to recover cost in the easement. That was the question we asked them, is, you know, is this, is this possible or isn't it? And if it's not, fine, we're gone.
It seems kind of weird to charge a fee to enter a community forest.
No, it's
Right,
really not. You get charged a fee to go to national parks, you get charged, which is national park.
parks or state parks.
You get charged to park on the,
To park, I can see that.
those. I'm not defending it, I'm just
No,
simply saying.
And I'm just
yeah,
commenting, yeah, absolutely, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand.
well, and that is certainly an issue that has to be sorted out, because if you don't sort it out now, it's gonna come back. and-
That's why I asked the question and they responded. They went back, they went through
It's
their,
contradictory.
they went through and they came back and said, yes, that is possible. And we said, thank you, because now it's worth our taking a look to see whether there's anything that makes sense. We're not pushing to be there as a ski touring foundation. We just didn't want to be invited there to be told that we couldn't do it in a way that we could recover our cost.
Well, there used to be trails, for the old ski touring that would come from.
There are old blue markers all through, there's old blue markers that go back.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're embedded in trees.
because there's
Free
two,
Caldwell.
yeah, but there's two costs there. There's the cost of building the trail,
Mhm.
which would be the same for like a mountain bike trail system. But then there's, unlike those systems, there's the daily cost of grooming. And that's expensive. To run that groomer is almost $110 an hour if you put in the depreciation cost. So every night you're running one of the two groomers, you're burning through almost $1,000 in cash.
Well, I guess that's why.
I don't think
we
people
never go to those
understand
trails.
how expensive it is to provide groomed
Yeah,
cross-country
those
ski.
trails were always problematic to ski.
Huh?
I only went up those trails.
Yeah.
Coming down was just a nightmare.
But the Ski Touring Foundation cannot put in a trail and groom it for the public for free. It
Mhm.
cannot afford to do it.
But well, the
Because
sticking point being the grooming, like regardless if there's some sort of cross-country skiing there, Jackson Ski Touring only wants to be involved with machine groomed terrain.
if it was involved, yes. But they haven't even decided what would make sense. They just wanted clarity so that we could, I didn't, to be perfectly honest, I didn't want to spend a lot of time looking at trail possibilities to connect from Dundee to East Pasture if it wasn't feasible. They said it's feasible, so we'll look. Step two will be to ask, does it even make sense for the Ski Touring Foundation? It may not, in which case it's moot. If there's something that makes sense that would be presented, it would be open to the dialogue of that group. And if they say no, so be it.
Is that part of, I don't know if this is getting into speculation, but of Ski Touring's long-term plan of extending Bog Brook around to Bald Land or,
That's not, Forest Service will not permit. That's dead.
okay, permanently, forever?
Basically, it's in their mapped lynx habitat, which is very frustrating because it's outdated in the forest plan. Unless they change the forest plan, they will not permit that trail.
Okay.
There are links up there.
It is theoretical lynx habitat based on early data when the forest plan was put together, and don't get me going any further. We've gone through with their biologists, but the Region 9 said no.
So,
Their biologist agrees with us, it's not lynx habitat. But that's the way it is in the forest plan.
so whatever skiing that would occur on the Dundee Community Forest, it would either have to be contiguous with the East Pasture, either connecting there somehow, or it would just be another orphaned area if it,
My quick look at it would be that the only thing that would make sense would be a trail to go from Dundee to get you to East Pasture. And that would give some insurance if access through Windy Farm was ever lost. Because if access through Windy Farm is lost, now you have a problem up there, because you would lose your parking. Because all of that, a lot of people keep thinking that's public land, same as they did with the Ballantyne property. It's operating on private property, and it's at the whims of the private property owner. There would be no use at Prospect in the winter without access through private parking up at Prospect. And even though there's a good relationship with the owner at Windy Farm, it is a new owner. If they change their mind, that network is done.
Okay, well,
That's the reality.
I think I was kind of far afield of what we have going on there. You're mentioning of apple tree pruning. I don't think that's gonna happen. We'll see.
That will not kill the trees.
But I think what Tom said last month is that like November is a viable. I was thinking it just needed to be done in the spring, like.
Usually it's when the trees are dormant, so you wait till spring, catch it early. They don't have energy going up. In the fall, they're starting to, the energy is going back down to the root system. It's fine. Also, they say when to prune apple trees is when your jackknife is sharp.
Okay.
So in other words, you could do some pruning anytime. And fall might be fine. I don't think you'll hurt the trees or cut into their vigor if you do, say, more conservative pruning in the fall, when it's easier to move around and get there. Although in the late fall is when apple drops are happening that a lot of wildlife take advantage of.
Right.
And I think that's what the trees are for. They're for wildlife. They're certainly not for people making cider or applesauce or anything.
Well, I think if that could be something that happens in the fall, I think we're more likely to be able to schedule it.
Especially if the weather keeps going. No snow until, Christmas, and then on the 3rd of April we'll have 2 feet of snow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the only other thing that I had kind of in my mind of. Once road bans are off and work can start happening up in the parking area, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything until May at least on that front.
On the apple trees?
No, on the parking area, on the new parking area.
No, but, I think as I mentioned the last meeting, this is a while back, but I talked to Gary and I talked with Jim Innes at the Forest Service, and I think we've agreed it'll be probably a half day's work going up to the Forest Service's sand pit, bringing it down and just sort of delineating the boundaries. It's flat up there, pushing back a few of the stumps and stuff. People were parking in that area this summer. And then, I've got the signs, so the sign's ready to be put up here as well. So,
Okay.
I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. And my plan was just to get back in touch with Gary, find out when it fit his schedule once the road ban is gone, and double check with Jim Innes that Forest Service is fine to grab some sand from the sand pit there and be done with it in a half day.
Okay. Jackson Falls, or if there's any other Prospect Farm issues. Okay. Jackson Falls, Brian coordinated with his logger that as soon as the road bans are lifted, we can get wood chips up there. And Pam, you spoke with Bob, and he just
said
needs.
anytime during the week after work,
Okay.
so it's later. It doesn't take long with his little Bobcat.
And I did talk with Emily on the FEMA money,
Right.
and she's trying to find out whether they can accelerate. I think you looked at it, but You know, it's kind of, if FEMA's serious about fixing these things, you need to fix it before the summer, not at the end of the summer, because the demand and the damage will be done, further damage will be done before that. So whether there's any, Emily has not really gotten a strong response back at this point, but it could be that if FEMA can accelerate it, then we could try to set up, you know, a more professional, quicker way to do it. But I think as we discussed at the last meeting, we should add this as the backup plan.
Yeah, I spoke with Emily on Monday, and they're being assigned a female person, but that hadn't happened yet, and so I
And concurrently, they'll be doing the bridge this year, the Valley Cross Bridge.
Oh, yeah, I had some
yeah.
complaints about the trees they're taking out. They're taking out a couple of really big trees over by the handicap parking. They're marked, which is kind of curious because there's a telephone pole there, but they're leaving that.
I'm assuming that's their excavator that's probably parked, stage ready to go at the fire pond.
What's on the other side of the road?
Oh, the big, yeah, I
Oh,
don't
that's
know,
their- oh, that's
by
their
the beaver
area.
pond.
Yeah, I'm guessing,
I don't know.
but they brought that in real quick before the road ban, so
Right.
but I can't
Why it's been parked there. for
come
so
up with
long,
why
yeah.
anybody else put an excavator there, but.
Yeah, so Pam had received some communication, and Burr had responded that I don't think that there was a lot of wiggle room as to what that they were allowing, or the construction was the priority in that regard, and
But it seemed like you were talking mostly, oh, it'll be a good thing for the snow plowing. So,
These are trees up near the bridge, I didn't notice.
there's big trees.
Yeah,
Well, it's the
Big
staging
trees.
area too for their equipment and their material, because they're gonna be bringing in big things, and they've gotta put it someplace, so.
Well, they'll have the road, yeah. But
Well,
it just
they-
seems like if they can leave the telephone pole, why can't they leave the trees? But
these would be trees up near where the fence is coming up, then I assume.
these are trees by the
between,
handicap parking. So if you're coming towards the bridge, they're two very large trees that they're ringed with tape now. Take a look.
I'll look tonight.
yeah, so it has been raised, but I think our role there is just going to be keeping eyes on the project and make sure that they're following best practices, and, you know, that they're silt fencing and all of that.
Right, that's what I was thinking, is we're looking for how they're doing it.
Yes,
And, you know, I don't think we step in, if they need those trees out, I think we have to bring, plus they're in the right of way, I think we have to let them go, pretty much. If that's the way they feel, you know, how they have to stage this. I don't think they can go on the other side.
no, well, I don't know, but
Well, I don't think they have the flat space over there that.
there was the staging aspect, there was that where they'll be excavating, where the wing walls will be installed will impact the root zone, so even if they don't cut them down, they may end up damaging the roots anyways, and then creating an issue down the road.
I hadn't thought of
Well, I
that.
think those will be they must be talking about the trees on the other side of the road, because those are the ones that are going down the bank. But the two big trees I'm talking about are nowhere near down, the bank.
Closer to where the porta potties
Yeah.
are.
Just, you can read what Burr Phillips wrote in there, the response. Didn't know if you wanted to circulate that or not.
I can't remember if that. I'll forward that along.
Thanks.
They can also use the road as the staging area because it'll be closed.
Other than having to move machinery in and out
Right.
past,
Yeah, but
I'm assuming they gotta bring in a pretty big crane because those steel I-beams underneath are huge.
Yeah, so I guess we don't have a date. At town meeting, Chief Purley stopped Dick and said he has a handicap placard downstairs that we can get to put on the parking.
And he said he has to have that one to enforce it.
We just need a post that'll, because we have this, well, we have a sign there right now.
There are no more cedar posts?
No, there are. But I think we can add it to that post.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would make sense.
But I haven't, well, depending on, that may also be moved depending on when construction starts there, if it, whether that's accessible. And then they didn't, in their, I'm trying to remember if they said that the resident parking spots were going to be available there too, that, I'll follow up, I'll find out about that. I don't think that's relevant at the moment, so.
Yeah, I don't know how long it takes if they're starting this month. Although with the snow, who knows?
I don't think they can start till the road ban is lifted.
Yeah. I would agree with that. So that's all I have on that. Anything else?
Well, I was wondering if anybody thinks it would be objectionable or not. I was thinking of picking up some of the bags, just a few of those bags of the small bark nuggets. There's one section down there that's very narrow, right up against the water. And I thought it might be kind of a good spot to try and put some stuff down there without people having to truck wheelbarrows there, because it's kind of like in between where the handicap parking space is on Carter and going up. There's that real narrow section.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe getting some bags of those small nuggets and just trying putting some of those in there.
It's a pretty short distance if we have to wheelbarrow up into there. Because if he can get part way up.
He's not gonna, because he's not gonna be able to get in there.
Right.
I just thought with.
But if he can just bring down and dump some piles in, then we can shovel them in and bring them up.
Just, yeah, okay. I mean, I've done that a few times and it's, it'll be easy with the bags, but.
Dry wall buckets.
Yeah. I guess maybe we can
Maybe we can get some FEMA dollars.
look at that in terms of just in regular maintenance,
Right.
rather than having to get access to wood chips all the time. If we can just fill in with those. that might
But
be-
those will float away the same as the wood chips did. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
If-
But they do break down a little bit, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know it's still on my list to try to put together a comprehensive, but I've been tied up with some other stuff I've been working on.
Oh, yeah.
Dick brought some documents from when he was selectman about Jackson Falls that had maybe worthwhile. He's gonna make copies of this. And maybe shed some other light on the if this is the quick claim that you had, or if you've been able to review this. And then also there was
You want the letter?
Yeah.
I thought there was an easement.
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at this, but it's been a long time since I got started on this, but
Yeah, perpetual easement, so it's a quitclaim deed, so they are,
are we talking about at the bottom of the falls or the town land at the top of the
this is
falls?
from Mount Inc.
The blue outline is, I think, clear.
Is that the easement? The blue outline?
Well, it's highlighted in blue.
So,
Right
Oh,
here.
I see what you're saying, convertible land.
Yes.
So that's the, it's
so
key to this.
there's
So
land in, land,
So this is color coded to this.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So that's really cool. That's really helpful. So this says a perpetual easement over upon a certain parcel of land, convertible land. That's a good spot. So that's all an easement. That's really helpful, Dick. I like that, because then you can see what's what.
And then I have the research report of who did the deed research.
Who did it?
I
Is it
don't
Sue
know.
Hooper?
I didn't look that far.
Yeah, see this, I have seen this, because this says the grantors shall have the same full rights as any other member of the public. And that is the grantors was this, the old Wentworth,
Wasn't that right?
which the question came up was could Jackson Falls just be for Jackson residents only? Because that was being pushed by some folks.
Oh.
And this basically says that's not the case, because anybody who's associated with having given this deed had the rights, and they didn't have to be a Jackson resident.
But then the orange outline is what I find in somewhat, not dispute, but it's not clear.
It just says it's convertible land, but you lose convertible with it. It's usually associated with a condo, and convertibility, you lose it like very quickly.
But that's what they're calling, the
Well, they
blue
can-
outline land is convertible land
Well,
also.
it said,
On the map itself, I think in blue, there's a notation,
designated as convertible land, and then it says previously designated down as convertible land and withdrawable land. Let's see. Yeah, you'd have to look at the condo docs, but the convertible stuff usually goes away very quickly. I think, statutory, so I'm sure that's long gone, I think.
what is what is convertible land?
Means that they could change it from open space to whatever, to more condos.
Okay.
I don't think they could ever do that though, because
Because this, but it says subject nevertheless.
subject what?
It says subject nevertheless, and then it goes on, it says the conveyance is made subject to the following restricted reservations, and then this is where it gets down to
So they're reserving, what are they reserving?
the rights for anybody in the condo association, et cetera, to access this property, which is different than developing it.
Right,
And I don't think that goes away, does it?
no. So what happens is when you have.
That was my interpretation, it did not go away.
No, and see what happens is when you have an easement, ownership is a bundle of sticks.
Right, I understand that, yeah.
So basically the easement is a stick, but Mal Inc. still owns it, or their successors and assigns.
Yeah, and this was a deed, not an easement.
Right, well, it's a quitclaim deed, but it's still an easement. So in other words, they're not conveying, they're conveying an easement, perpetual easement. So,
It's a professional easement over to and upon a certain parcel of land. Quit claim covenants. You know better than I.
so, let me see, so what they're saying here is, let me see, so. To the extent they have the interest of each make pure record for consideration paid grant to the town of Jackson. It's just an easement. So that's why they're reserving all this stuff, which is kind of interesting. Also granted hereby any development rights as to the within described property here to be conveyed to the within.
So they've extinguished the development rights
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, because you're conveying that.
Right.
But subject to the within restrictions against further development. So in other words, they want to get rid of it, but they don't want anybody else building on it.
Right.
But it's still an easement, which is interesting.
But they reserved.
We observed a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but they gave up, like you said. The thing is, Mel Lake could release the restrictions against further development. You know,
And I think that was the condos that are across the road. I
I
don't,
think so, yeah. I think that's what they're talking about.
but when I read this, which was a long, long time ago,
Mm.
when that question came up, I said, I don't think the town has a legitimate right to restrict it to just residents.
Mhm. Plus,
Huh?
why would you anyway, you know? I mean, can you imagine trying to police that?
And they took federal money to get it in the Wild and Scenic Program, et cetera, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna get all of this folder copied in the office so that y'all can have a copy of it.
That would be.
I don't wanna give up this
Or
copy.
maybe it
yeah.
could be scanned in and emailed.
Dick,
Whatever's
do you remember
easier.
when you went through this, because we also had the conversation where I couldn't get clarity, but the land that was down at the bottom, which was the parking that is used by the Wentworth Hotel, I couldn't, we went back and forth, but I didn't have any documents, so I didn't really know whether when we put this plan together, but whatever we put in has to take into consideration whatever the deeds and easements or whatever exist for there.
Yeah, I think Larry always said we had an easement down there. And
Which
I'm
is,
sure it's in the deed somewhere, but.
yeah, and that was a question though, an easement right away to walk to the base of the falls versus an easement that was for parking. There's a difference between those two.
Mhm.
And I think the hotel has made the case that this parking is theirs.
Well, their signage acts as though it's theirs.
Right.
Mhm.
And I have no, I just didn't have the background to give an opinion one way or the other on that part. But when we put together a plan,
Mhm.
we, and thanks Dick for doing that, but that's, we do need to clarify what does it actually say.
Mhm.
I mean, it's the same with Prospect, where we got into debate about is this just the town? But when you read through the language, it was pretty, you'd have a tough time
Right.
making a case. I mean, you could bring that case forward, but I don't think you'd win. You probably spent a lot of money. I don't think the town would win in just
Mhm.
restricting it.
Mhm.
I will hold on to it.
Particularly since the town had developed a parking lot up there with the Forest Service,
Mhm.
because it was access to their land as well.
Right.
But that's, we need to focus on Jackson Falls. I think we've been through the Prospect Farm issue.
Okay. We don't have anything to report for Gray's Inn or the vernal pool. Do you have anything on the community garden plan?
Nope.
Okay.
The vernal pool, I just say that at one time, it was discussed having a trail from the tennis court parking lot below the library to the vernal pool, just because it was of such interest. So, you know, if we ever wanted to go in there and establish that as a trail, maybe brush out around the vernal pool, I think it would be appropriate. I mean, when the work first got done, the excavator put in a drain of the vernal pool. And that was nixed early on and said, no, the vernal pool stays. It's an item. I mean, you can't just do away with it. So it got put back together, but I think that a trail to it from the parking lot would be great, because then, you know, they could ship the kids out
Where is the vernal pool?
Just right back.
It's, I can walk you to it, but.
Yeah, but,
You can throw a rock in it from the field.
right, but is it right off the trail when you start up?
Um,
Well, you know how
yeah,
the
it's before you go over the
walking,
bridge.
ski trails,
Yes.
snowshoe
It's
trail?
before you go over the little stream.
It's below that
Yeah, it's in the.
So it's on this side,
Yeah. mhm.
and on this side.
on the right, okay, I know what you're talking
But
about.
there might be a lot of poison ivy, I think we're talking about that.
There's a lot of poison ivy all
So I don't know
over
how
the
you
place.
handle that if you're gonna make trails out there for kids, but I guess you guys will figure it out. Somebody better than I.
Yeah.
No flip-flops.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that making the vernal pool more of a, you know, something to go look at would be good.
Okay.
Amphibians will be moving soon.
Mm.
Oh, the peepers will be in there soon, after it snows.
Dick, are those your copies of the Jackson easements there?
Yeah.
Yeah, great,
But that's what I said, I will get these copied
great.
at
That'd be
the
appreciated.
office so
Yeah.
that there's a free copy. I wouldn't want to part with this just yet.
Mm.
No, that's, no,
I'm not
I,
old enough,
No, you're the custodian.
but you'll be in my will.
one more thing on the to-do list.
Yeah. I have not gotten any communication back from the VRAP coordinator or that person, whoever is in charge of the program. We're kind of coming up on their start time for that. I don't know how to pivot out of
Is that
this.
DES?
Yeah.
I might ask
He-
somebody, I can ask somebody I know.
Okay,
Well,
I mean, you
should
can
be,
just see
yes.
if they're still
Yeah.
doing it, because he initially reached out and said, we're doing this, funding
What was his name?
Liam.
What they may not know, and I can't remember on the VRAP program, but some of those programs, DES would get pass-through money from the feds, and they'd be able to do it, because the state's funding of DES is, like
Pretty
many
poor,
things, is
yeah.
pretty poor. And whether that's the issue,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course they have to get the DES budget through the legislative body, which is pretty tough sledding.
What's the fiscal year for the
I'm trying to remember, but,
taxes or April 1? To March.
do you remember what the state budget fiscal year is? Yeah,
Might be the same as the towns.
I think, yeah, because the town is what, Jan, well,
It's April 1 to March.
Yeah.
Isn't the state July or something?
It's what?
Isn't the state July?
Could be something weird.
It's
like that.
really
Yeah.
weird.
you go to Google.
I'm
Google
sorry,
it, 2
weird.
seconds.
You weird.
But the budget process is well before,
Yeah.
and I know when I was the chair of the State's Rivers Committee,
The state's.
You never knew, huh?
State's rivers.
Rivers Management Committee, yeah. It was always a cat fight for these programs.
William Bonyman,
William.
yeah,
Bonyman.
Bonyman.
I'll check. See if he can find it.
He does have, I'll try, he has a cell phone number, not his office number, so I may reach out to that.
Okay.
But I have not heard anything from that.
I know a lot of those guys, folks, you know, wearing dual hats and whatever fire drill is in front of them, that's what they're gonna jump to.
Conservation easements. Tom has not indicated if he's going to continue on. So if he's not, his property will be up. Would you be willing, Ken?
You know which property that is?
It's the Pepper, it's the, I can't remember, it's not Brookside. Yeah,
Bristol,
yeah.
sure.
And that
as long as it's not considered a conflict of interest, because the Ski Touring Foundation is on that. And then, and Brookside just did donate a permanent trail easement, which was permissible under the easement terms, yes.
Then you're familiar with the easement.
I have seen it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ben, is Tom gonna step down from the whole board or just,
I don't know. He did not respond, and I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I don't think that the an executory interest has been filed for last year for that property. I just heard from Spiniff, and they wanted to see why we hadn't. So I think that's a good transition if Tom is not going to be here, then
Because the town holds that easement, if I'm correct. Pretty certain it does.
I can't remember which one it is, but
The Brookside, I believe the town owns it. That's when they were trying to get properties put into easements to demonstrate that the town truly had an interest in getting the Wildcat into the Wild and Scenic Program to prevent the hydro project from being built at the falls.
okay. Well, I will try to have a conversation with Tom this week, and if there's any information he needs to transmit.
Well, if he wants to stay on the committee, then he can still
Okay.
keep that.
Or maybe he just doesn't want to do the conservation easement, and we don't mind monitoring it. Maybe
Okay.
one less thing for Tom to have to be worried about.
Yeah, and I've spoken to Brian about that, and I may take over monitoring his. So we'll see how that shakes out in the next few months.
There must be a form in that where it needs to be reported to, et cetera.
It's all online with the society.
Okay.
So it's fairly straightforward. It's just logging
Yeah.
contact information, and if you've walked the property, reviewed the easement documents, contacted the property owner, the date that you monitored, and that's it. It's fairly straightforward. And you can,
Which could be difficult because that property now is owned by Sarah and Brian, not by Alice Pepper. And Sarah is in Sweden much of the time, and Brian is out west, but Brian is late stage ALS.
I'll follow up with Julie about that.
But they can be I can contact Sarah.
Well, I'm working with Julie on updating our records on that, so when the tax records have changed, we've updated our records for the contact, so if that has changed, we may need to update.
Well, it is a Brookside, I'm trying to remember because I remember reading this stuff when we got the permanent trail easement from the family, and it had to be signed by Brian and by Sarah. And Brian was back here last summer, which is when we formally had the trail easement that was signed over to the Ski Touring Foundation. And that trust has been passed from Allison, the late John Pepper, to the heirs. Because they were the signers on the trail easement to Ski Touring. That's why I know that it's now Sarah and Brian.
Okay. That's good. That's good information. Wetlands, we're getting just a heads up from Rick Vandepol, who will be doing the trout stream rehabilitation project on Tin Mountain's property there off of Dundee. And he kind of went over their project that they would be doing at the Dundee Management Committee. They were able to change the document that said that they may not be able to do this work because of the special management area, but it has been amended in their agreement, so they're able to do that, and they're on schedule for late July, August to start that program. And they were just giving us a heads up that they'll be filing for a wetlands permit coming up. If anyone wants to review.
Rick is very qualified. They've done this before.
Yes, I think this is his 26th stream that they'll be doing this
Yeah,
in.
they've been doing it with John McGee, who I know from New Hampshire Fishing Game, so it's not a bunch of amateurs that are just dropping trees.
So there'll probably be some amateurs helping do the electro fishing, but
And maybe hauling a few things away.
so that'll be happening this summer. I guess we can briefly go over what occurred at the Dundee Community Forest Management Committee. Main takeaway that 2 at-large members were named, and I of course did I get them down? I did not.
And they're gonna be appointed.
They've been appointed and approved by the board.
Well, Peter Benson was for Jackson.
He's the selectman's rep, and
He's the chairman.
he was made the chairman.
Right.
The Jackson member at large is Limmer,
Oh, Trevor.
Trevor Limmer, and Bartlett's representative is,
John, I can't remember his last name.
he works at Lucy's.
Yeah.
He works in the rental section. He's a good guy, so. And I think they bring in sort of the non-recreational or hunting aspect there.
And youth, they're younger than
Yes.
many of the board members,
Yes.
by a lot.
But a slight preference for preserving wildlife. That was kind of their focus going into it, is making sure that it wasn't impacting wildlife.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, he had a good understanding of the Bartlett section that was off of,
16.
drawing a blank. Thornhill.
Yeah. And some understanding of what would require a commercial sugaring operation, if that were to be a thing. That was the other thing that was amended to the management document, was to allow for commercial maple sugar leasing to occur most likely on the Doublehead parcel.
Which fit in with the same questions that the Ski Touring Foundation had.
Well, it's also an agricultural enterprise, so it had a built-in dispensation.
Yes, so I think it's still probably early. We're I think getting into the hammering your question out, which was what are allowable uses, what are commercial uses, would ski touring be allowed to operate there? I don't think we've received an official answer outside of,
I got an email back from Linda Como,
okay,
which basically, all I did is point out that you've got 2 documents that are contradictory, which trumps which. Linda came back and said the easement trumps the management plan.
And sugaring doesn't charge anybody to go in and look at it. You're not charging the community. Skiing is charging the community for the use. So I think there is a difference. I wouldn't say that's
Well, they're taking,
apples to apples.
Yeah.
I'd say that is a different category.
but they're taking a resource and selling it,
And they're paying for a license to do that.
and they're paying
Yes,
for
but
license.
that doesn't impact anybody in the community.
That's not, I would disagree, because when you put up tubing and all that sort of stuff, you are essentially taking a parcel. And then they also pointed out that if you do that, you've actually taken away the quality of the maple trees for timber. So they are giving up,
That affects the trees for
Yeah.
timber?
because the decay and discoloration that goes into the wood. from when.
I don't think that's accurate, because I think there's
That's what the guy told me.
100-year-old maple sugar bushes that are
Yeah.
still quite viable if you don't overtap. I mean, it just comes down to how much energy you take out, and if you're conservative, you don't.
Yeah,
No, the question came up, and I didn't bring it up, this was brought up by somebody else there, but I know because I worked with Alec Shiger when I was in grad school, who does decay and discoloration. But when you come in, you tap in, you do put a place where decay and discoloration can start with those tap holes, and it will show up in the wood when it follows. And they were bringing up, I forget who was there, but Ben, you were there, but it was brought up that when you tap maple trees, you do reduce the quality of the wood.
Of course, it could be desirable.
For timber.
applications.
Oh, yes, that absolutely. Hopefully, you don't have to sell off your maple sugar.
No. But essentially, you are taking and privatizing that portion of the forest for the person who's running a commercial.
But isn't agriculture part of the document?
yes.
As was recreation. As was recreation.
Right, but charging for it isn't.
I think there's a
Now, see,
misconception.
you're arguing for ski touring, which I understand, that's what you represent. But I don't think that it's the same idea.
Well, I won't get into a long discussion here with you,
You
but
can't-
there is a difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit. Jackson is a legitimate 501c3. It takes those costs that it gets. It gives the free skiing program to the Jackson school kids. It runs afternoon programs for kids. It takes the money and plows it back into those free services. When you run a commercial sugaring operation, you put that money in your pocket as the businessman. There's a hell of a difference between those two. And that is why a 501c3, just like the church, accepts money from people who come in to go to church to pay for the heating and so on and so forth. A nonprofit cannot exist without getting a revenue stream. It cannot.
I don't think that there was a discussion on the difference between a pure lease out of an operation for sugaring versus capturing all of those profits from the sugaring operation itself.
Well, I think we're making a mistake right now. We're trying to make decisions for the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. The board of the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust makes those decisions. Groups like ours only put input to them, but they are the owners of the land, and they will make the final decision based on the terms of the easement that they have with the state.
Correct, and I think what was discussed at the management meeting was that they have not implemented, there's two different models for maple sugaring, which is the organization itself as the Randolph Community Forest does, which is this wholly self-contained, and all of those profits that are captured are kept there for management costs.
Yeah.
Versus a lease out where the landowner would only be making money on the number of taps
Yeah.
that were
It's like 50 cents a tap is the,
Yeah.
used to be the,
$1.25.
That's what the Forest, that's the way the Forest Service runs it as well. There's a fee per tap, I forget what it is, but yes.
Yes, and so there's those two models that they've not settled on either one of those, and what it would entail if someone else would come in and lease that out, and what the usage and term limits and all of that. So that's still on the table. That'll be discussed at the next meeting, I suppose.
But I think we're getting ourselves twisted in a knot here. Maybe that's where my frustration is. The Ski Touring Foundation doesn't even know if it makes sense for them to even propose a trail there at this point. It hasn't walked the land, it hasn't looked at it. It just asked for clarity Because if it didn't make sense, because it couldn't cover its costs for grooming, it wasn't even gonna propose anything.
What, I mean, without getting into long-term strategic vision of what ski touring is, I think that they would like to develop as much trails as high up as possible.
I can tell you right now that the Ski Touring Foundation is struggling to figure out how to manage the trails it has right now. Because of the cost of just maintaining them. It may not have any interest in even doing a trail there until it goes out and even takes a look at the land to see whether they can make a connection. There's gonna be a huge issue there about parking, because when I looked at those plans, it's not clear where any parking, doesn't matter whether it's backcountry or whether it's mountain biking, because the current parking there is only the Forest Service parking lot, which is full much of the time already. So,
And also, if they don't link up with the trail system, then they've got to truck a groomer into an area to try to groom it, and that's not cost effective at all.
I mean, I can tell you right now, because, I mean, when I went to that meeting, I was learning what tracks, just like everybody else was, that they were gonna focus recreation on, and what tracks they were gonna focus in on keeping more or less status quo with the minor trails, such as the stuff that abuts with Tin Mountain, and then you had the Bartlett stuff. The area that was, my interpretation is the area that they wanted to see recreation, whether it be mountain biking, backcountry, ski touring, or whatever, was gonna be on what they call the Doublehead property. Is that your understanding? That was the one.
I think that was their first immediate, that there's an identified usage pattern there, and
But also didn't conflict with a lot of the resource values that they'd identified.
correct.
Because they do have some high elevation stuff that has sensitive wetlands, and because of the streams and so forth. So those, because there's a couple of those big blocks that were out there. So the area that we, at least that I understood when I was sitting there at that meeting, was that's the area, if there was most likely gonna be mountain biking, backcountry, Jackson, whatever, was gonna be that block, was gonna be the priority, with a possibility of a trail that would connect from Tin Mountain's land, which would be the old Dundee Road that came down to the Dundee, maybe carrying that down. Where they would put that parking, don't know. But that was a preliminary meeting, and I just don't know why we're spending a lot of time focusing on ski touring at this moment, because it doesn't even know whether it even makes sense for it to propose anything.
Well, I mean, just, we've discussed this in the past, and that if a recreational source is going to be developed in the town of Jackson, and you're asking the town of Jackson to put input, that there could be more than one game in town in terms of getting trail access. And I think if a from-scratch trail system was going to be developed, and there were an opportunity to say, well, maybe this isn't the right solution for ski touring, that it's not in their core network, it's not easily accessible from their core network, perhaps to people that, at least from my perspective, that there should be other options for people in town to go to, that where maybe they don't want to go to a place where they don't have the option of walking.
I agree with you 100%, Ben.
Yeah.
But that's my understanding at that meeting, was that ski touring was invited there. It didn't ask to be there. Just as NIMBA was invited to be there in the backcountry, was to see what interests these groups had and what their plans were.
Just be inclusive, yeah.
Well, I think they're
And
an obvious partner in that question, but I'm just...
But ski touring is not interested in continuing to expand and expand and expand. The only interest, I mean, I can speak from this because I chair the Trails Committee, and it's because I'm gonna have to leave in a couple of minutes here, is to connect up there if you had to preserve the East Pasture Loop. That would be its only, it wouldn't be to develop a big trail system or anything. That's the only thing that makes sense. It's a small parcel, it's got a lot of steepness to it to even get up there. That's the only interest that the Ski Touring Foundation logically would have in that parcel.
Okay.
But to have a small isolated 2 or 3 kilometer that you'd have to truck the groomer to, doesn't even make sense for the Ski Touring Foundation. The only thing that would make sense is your insurance if you lost, and everybody would lose East Pasture.
Okay, well, and
I say that as chair of the Trails Committee. There is no interest in building big loops of that on that small parcel. It's nonsensical.
yeah, I feel like this is, it really is a branding issue of just calling it a community forest has set up expectations so much differently in my mind of, well, that the town, like, what is the role of the town of Jackson and Bartlett in giving recommendations to a management committee that gives recommendations to Saco Valley Land Trust Board if they're the ones making the decisions ultimately? Like, they have to do it with consultation of the stakeholder, or not even, we're not even stakeholders, we're just observers in this moment. So.
Isn't it kind of
And as I've said before, if that's the recommendation, and that's what the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust and the others agreed to, fine. We were invited, I mean, Ski Touring was invited there. It didn't ask to come.
Well, yeah,
And again, I don't quite know what we're debating, because I do agree with you.
We're getting information to bring back. This is
Yep,
one of the did you want to say something?
no,
This is one of the places where we have the dialogue, that we can have input to the committee as we are inputting to the selectmen from this board, to the committee that brings it to the Upper Saco. And I think that's where the dialogue takes place. I don't think it,
Dick, I don't disagree, but I guess the serious problem I have here is,
you don't want to spend the time on it right now without a mandate or knowing where it was going.
if this committee wants to make a recommendation that ski touring shouldn't be there, make it. That's fine.
well,
But there's this perception that I keep hearing in this dialogue that I find very frustrating, is I don't disagree that other parties could say, we don't want this, we don't think this is appropriate, and if that's what's decided, so be it. But this idea that the Ski Touring Foundation is trying to take over that area is to me, it's problematic, because that's not what it's trying to do. It was asked to come, it came, it asked a legitimate question, because if the answer to that legitimate question was, you can't do it, we were gonna say, fine, we'd walk out the door and it's done. The Ski Touring Foundation has not even gotten to step 2 to even decide if it wants to even go through the bother. It hasn't walked the land to take a look if it's even, how expensive it would be to do less than a kilometer to connect up or not to connect. It hasn't even made that decision. And all of a sudden I'm hearing about, this is not my perception of a community forest, etc. That perception is fine, it can be brought to that board, and if that's what they decide, so be it.
yes, but we're laying that groundwork, and I don't think going into it, which is, you needed to have the clarity of what would be allowed, because if ski touring wasn't allowed to be a monopoly stakeholder on their trails.
Ben, be careful of the terminology. It was not asking to be a monopoly on the trails.
Let him talk.
It hasn't even made a proposal.
He has an idea. This is the dialogue, how we weigh out the pros and cons of any of the ideas of developing this.
When ski touring puts up a sign that says exclusive trail access, that's a monopoly on use.
Maybe, if that's your perception. But
It's seasonal.
it's seasonal. It would have to pay for all the expense of building that trail for people to use it, and it would have to pay to groom it. And it hasn't even made a decision that it even wants to go there. But if,
I'm just talking about the model that you're saying that ski touring trail system, that all of it, because it can't be piecemeal throughout the system, that ski touring needs to be able to control access on a trail that they have signed, like, to maintain. Like, that's part of you need, as you said, need to recoup the cost
they do, yeah,
of that. That's done through controlling access.
correct.
Okay. So, in a community like the way that has been implemented in Jackson is that there's exclusive ski zones and that you can't walk on them.
That's not entirely true. It does have trails that you can walk right behind here that it maintains.
They are not posted as such. Or
And it is true that you can walk on them with snowshoes. You just can't post over them. On some trails. Some trails you cannot.
Just out of curiosity, what's the use of the special use permit on the Forest Service land?
No different than like Attitash or Wildcat or
Is
anybody
it-
else.
Is it limited just to ski touring? I
No,
don't
special
know.
use permits are used by guides, all kinds of different,
But you get a license, right, to use?
and you have to pay.
And you have to pay, and does that exclude other uses once you
Yeah.
pay?
You can't just decide I'm gonna skin up Wildcat. You can't just decide I'm gonna skin up Attitash.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
You can't
that
decide
they-
I want to run a snowmobile on Attitash or Wildcat.
So when you get a license over the US Forest Service land,
It's not a license, it's a permit, but yeah.
it is a permit?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you're paying for it, so you get to.
They have a
it's your
formula
usage. Yeah.
that they use nationwide that is the same for alpine areas and Nordic areas, the same for tapping. They have a formula
Mm.
as to what your fee is based on the percentage of the trail system and your revenue and so forth. It has to be paid back to the Forest Service,
So I guess that would be kind of the model in some respects.
which would be like putting in a maple tap and having to pay you 50 cents a tap. It's the same model. But I have a problem because I need to get my wife to it because she can't drive right now to come in now.
I think we got some new business here.
well, I think this will be.
I respect your opinion, but again,
Well, I don't think I've gotten to my opinion,
Yeah.
which is that.
but if groups don't want that, I'd like to know now, because I don't want to spend any time having anybody walk up there and take a look at a trail, if that is a decision that's being put forth, and I would respect it. You know, speaking for the Ski Touring Foundation.
So this, I guess, the nutshell of what I'm saying, I don't want to see whatever happens up there be a clone of Prospect. I want it, because the worst interactions that I've had recreating have been at Prospect with people who don't necessarily understand all of the rules and regulations that went into that, and they just see walking is bad, and they don't understand the controlled access that, because Valentine's land. Anyways.
I wish
It
you had
could
to go
be-
through and build those lots and get the landowner to give you permission up there. I mean, I'm sorry, I gotta go, because
Okay.
I do have a site from that, but
Thanks, man.
All right, we'll continue this conversation.
Aren't we kind of done because we've lost our forum?
Well, is there any other business? We'll be giving
We won't take any votes.
we will give a
see you later.
Bye-bye.
presentation on invasive plants in July.
Who's going to give that presentation?
Probably me. At the Whitney Community Center.
Cool.
So
That'd be great.
we decided on a single topic rather than the two, rather than erosion control. He felt that that would be, if people had asked about that more,
Do you know which day that's gonna be?
he has not put a date on it yet. And he was out of town, so,
Okay.
or he'll be getting back into town soon, so.
That's excellent.
Anything else? We've already been adjourned.
Okay. No, I have no further.
Okay. I think there hasn't been another management committee meeting scheduled. I'll let you know when that happens. There hasn't been a date for the Whitney Community Center. I'll let you know when that happens. And I think that's it.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben.
Hats off to you.
And congratulations to your re-upping.
Yeah.
Get me for one more cycle.
Just one.